We opened the show talking about Chris Mortensen on ESPN saying that he's hearing Bryce Young's the pick for the Panthers at number 1. Obviously, this lends credence to what Lance Zierlein mocked yesterday. He has Bryce Young going number 1 in his mock, and then from there, things got a little crazy, Cody.
It does get a little interesting. It does get a little weird, and Lance's mock draft yesterday where he had the Houston Texans selecting a defensive lineman at number 2 and then trading up for Will Levis, I don't believe that made any Texans fan real happy. And even the most fervent Will Levis supporters probably can't get on board with trading up for Will Levis. You might like Will Levis, but trading future draft capital, which might amount to mid-round picks or even a future first to go get Will Levis, you can't really get on board with that. But I got to thinking about a world where Bryce Young's the number 1 pick to the Carolina Panthers. And then I got to thinking about DeMeco Ryans last week on NFL Network when he told us that the Texans really like 2 QBs, and we thought that, hey, the way he talked about this, kind of going to be, QB at the top.
This year's drafts, we have really a couple good quarterback prospects, at the top of the draft. And we want to add a young quarterback to our team. And we think that will be the right thing to do for our team. We feel like we have a good nucleus of players, but still want to add some competition at that quarterback position. And this year, it's 2 good guys at the top that we've looked at and that we value pretty highly. So we're excited about the draft. To be at that number 2 spot is not where you always want to be, in each year's draft. But when we are in this position, right, a top 2 pick, it's a chance to add a really talented player to our team. And so that's how we're looking at it, and we're excited about the opportunity. Our fans are excited about the opportunity of adding a really top-quality player to our team.
So DeMeco Ryans said that. They like 2 quarterbacks, a couple of good quarterbacks at the top. Is there any chance that C.J. Stroud's not one of those couple of good quarterbacks at the top?
Yeah, it is. It could be Will Levis. It could be Anthony Richardson. If Mike Tannenbaum was running the Texans, it'd be Hendon Hooker. Thank God he's not. It is possible. This is a GM that a year ago took Derek Stingley Jr. over Sauce Gardner. I don't know how many other teams would have done that.
And I go back to, it was about a month ago, and we asked each other the question, what are the Houston Texans likely to do on draft night as we talked that day? Again, it was about a month ago. And I said I believe they would draft Will Levis because I believed that somebody would get Bryce Young number 1, and I believe they would draft Will Levis. I don't think it's out of question. In fact, I would say that there's a better than 50% chance that they like Will Levis more than C.J. Stroud. You think about Caserio's draft history in the type of quarterback that he's been around in New England, he's assisted in drafting in New England, and his recent draft record here in Houston. Derek Stingley got drafted off of intangibles and not the most recent year of production that he had in the SEC. Well, that's what Will Levis would get drafted off of. Levis had one of the best seasons of Kentucky quarterbacks had in a very long time 2 years ago. Last year, he didn't have a great season. It was a poor season compared to expectations and what people believed he was capable of doing. But we've seen where the last season may not be the best season, and Nick Caserio has thought highly of the person. Will Levis played in the SEC. Caserio's drafted a tremendous amount of SEC players. And the conversations about, hey, things were a lot easier for C.J. Stroud because he played with a bunch of really good players. And Will Levis didn't play with hardly any good players. And he still made things work. Even last year, or 2 years ago at Kentucky, not last season, but the 2021 season. Not a bunch of NFL guys on that roster. A handful here or there sprinkled in the NFL, but not Olave and Wilson and Jackson Smith and Jigba and 2 first-round tackles and a future first-round or second-round running back and all that kind of stuff that Stroud had. So I believe it's better than a 50% chance that those 2 quarterbacks DeMeco Ryans are talking about are Bryce Young and Will Levis and not Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud.
What does DeMeco think?
That's another aspect of this.
If DeMeco's like, hey, I think we should take C.J. Stroud, I believe he's better than Will Levis, who has the final authority on that decision? You would think it's the GM, right? But this is not your typical GM. This is a GM who's been here through a bunch of different coaches. This is a GM who's been here, who has not hit on a vast majority of his early picks. There's been some good picks, no doubt, but the early signs have not been great, to put it nicely, on some of the early picks Nick Caserio's made. Cal McNair, I would think, wants to keep DeMeco happy. You don't want to rift on a decision like this. You'd want the GM and the head coach on the same page. What's the scenario if DeMeco's like, I like Stroud, and Caserio's like, well, I like Levis? Who wins out?
Could I answer your question with a question?
You love doing this, sure.
What would you do if you were Nick Caserio? If you did not feel strongly about a quarterback prospect that the head coach wanted, but you felt much stronger about a different guy, what would you do if you were Nick Caserio?
I'd probably defer to DeMeco Ryans.
Okay.
Because my job, my career as a GM is attached to him. So I got to hope he's right. That's how I would do it. Because if you're Nick Caserio and you pick the wrong guy, like DeMeco's going to be here either way. If you're Nick Caserio and DeMeco gets to pick his guy and Cal is aware of that, you might be able to have some more job security if you're deferring to the head coach.
My response would be, do you create an enemy by not picking the guy that the head coach really likes? Like how much more does DeMeco Ryans in this scenario like C.J. Stroud than Will Levis? Is he 50-50 and he wants you to make the decision, but you know he's maybe leaning a little bit more towards Stroud? Okay, you take who you believe the most in if you're Nick Caserio. But if you know, hey, DeMeco is staunchly opposed to Will Levis, very much in favor of C.J. Stroud, and then you draft Will Levis, do you create an enemy in your quest to keep your job? Which doesn't matter if the guy's good. If the guy turns out to be a good football player, who cares who drafted him? That was the big J.J. Watt thing. Who cares who got J.J. Watt in the building? They all got J.J. Watt in the building.
There was some stuff about Bill O'Brien maybe not being in love with the idea of Deshaun Watson.
Right. If you believe the rumors, Bill O'Brien was telling people that he liked Patrick Mahomes more than Deshaun Watson.
To be fair, I'd say that would have worked out fine for the Texans as well.
Sure, and maybe Patrick Mahomes wouldn't ask for a trade or allegedly assaulted 26 massage therapists.
Perhaps Bill O'Brien was misunderstood, Cody. That's my take today.
Screw that guy.
And that will, just like Lance Zierlein's mock, that take will get me thrown out of Houston.
That's the thing is, if you want to create an enemy on the off chance the quarterback doesn't work, then don't draft who the head coach wants. If you want to create an ally that can help you, potentially be like, hey, you know, I know this pick hadn't worked out great, but Nick's put some really good players in front of me, and we're going to make it work. Mr. McNair, you know, let him keep his job. Okay, if you get that because you draft the guy that the head coach wants, draft the guy the head coach wants.
I just wonder, because, like, let's put the Texans in the spot they were in a year ago. If DeMeco Ryans was like, I want Sauce Gardner, and I have every reason to believe that would be his guy, considering his mentor is Robert Saleh, who was pounding the table for the Jets to take Sauce last year. So I have to imagine if the same scenario played out a year ago, Sauce Gardner's a Texan right now, no?
Yep.
So, like, that's why I wonder if Caserio's on Levis and DeMeco's like, what are we doing? Let's take Stroud. Who wins that power struggle?
You go to the self-preservation mode in most times, I would think. But you also don't plan for failure. You plan for success. And if you're Nick Caserio, you'd have to go and figure out, okay, what's the level of success this team can have with Stroud? What's the level of success this team can have with Levis? I believe I know better than the first-time head coach, and we're going to take the guy that I want, not the guy that you want. Well, you might create an enemy in your quest to keep your job if things start going south.